One of my favorite people in the world has become, as far as I'm concerned, a prophetic genius through his speaking truth to power, taking advantage of social media. Bishop Talbert Swan is a phenom. Bishop Talbert Swan is a brother. Bishop Talbert Swan has blessed my ministry in so many ways, and I begin with this testimony because several years ago, it was real funny, Jerry Jones had the nerve to come against Colin Kaepernick because he was more upset about Colin Kaepernick taking a knee than he was about what Colin Kaepernick was taking a knee for. Jerry Jones never did connect the dots that the black players on his team were subjected to a policing system, a criminal justice system that is structured with a history of abuse in our community. And so Colin Kaepernick took a stand against that, and Jerry Jones was more upset about the stand that he took than he was about why he took the stand. And I won't forget it because I'm up here praying, okay, we got to do something. And it was real funny. Bishop Swan texted me and said, are you going to let Jerry Jones get away with that? And so it's like he's calling me out. You called me out, bruh. And so I said, no, he ain't getting away with that. And of course, we organized a few protests out at Cowboy Stadium, and we took a knee when the Cowboys couldn't take a knee. And Jerry Jones's police had to escort us and make sure that all was right. And so I want to thank him because I know iron sharpens iron, and he has been exactly that for me. But also I want to thank him because of his extraordinary leadership as a prophet. I could give you his resume, which is resplendent in terms of his academic attainment. He also is deep in terms of his DNA, his Kojic DNA in the Church of God in Christ. He is literally Church of God in Christ blue blood because God has a wonderful legacy, a family legacy that he has been bequeathed, and he is handling his heritage in a handsome fashion. And so all of that is cool, but what I really appreciate about him is the fact that he is a preacher, prophet par excellence for such a time as this. And in light of everything going on in this country, we need a word. In light of what's happening in this world, we need a word. And I'm going to tell you, I need a word today. Albany blew my mind this morning. She shared the fact that sadly, sickly, sinfully, this country, of course, this week passed legislation to fund the ongoing work that is taking place in Israel that is genocide. Let's just be real, genocide. You're killing people, and we are funding the genocide to the tune, watch this, they just passed it, of $26 billion. $26 billion. $26 billion. Bishop Swan, Albany, shared with me this morning that experts who do the work say it would take $25 billion to end hunger in America. Y'all didn't get that. We send in $26 billion over to the so-called Middle East to continue the annihilation of a people over there in the name of protecting Israel. And it would only take $25 billion to end hunger in this country. I need somebody who can prophetically preach to me right now, because we're in a country with misplaced priorities that is doing this in the name of liberty and justice for all, while calling ourselves one nation under God. Tupac is right. You know, it's funny, when it rains, it pours. We got money for wars, but we can't feed the poor. There's something sick about that. And I'm glad we got a preacher prophet in the house today who can tell it like the T.I. is. Bishop Swan, we are so proud of you. We thank God for your ministry. We thank God for what you're doing. Thank you for being a brother. And so he's going to be our preacher for this day. And so he's going to be preaching. We got a few things to do, and then he's coming to preach.
Now, if you know he's God, put your hands together and give God praise in this house. Please be seated in the presence of the Lord. This is the day that the Lord has made, and we are rejoicing and we are glad in it. David said this, he said, I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. And I often think about that David said, I was glad just because somebody said, let's go to church. If he was happy because somebody just invited him to church, how happy ought we to be in the house of the Lord? I want to, first of all, I want to honor this dynamic, didactic, visionary genius, this preaching phenom, this homiletical hero, this social justice activist, this freedom fighter, this humanitarian, this pastor, this brother, this friend, the Reverend Dr. Frederick Douglas Haynes III. Come on, help me celebrate your pastor on his 41st pastoral anniversary. Dr. Haynes, we thank God for the gift that you are to the nation and to the world. We must also pay homage to this greatness who is living in our midst, because oftentimes we want to give folks flowers when they're gone. But he's living in our times, he's impacting the world, and we thank God for him today. Now, there's a saying that needs to be corrected. It said that behind every great man is a great woman. That's theologically incorrect. Because when God looked down on his creation and he saw Mr. Bear had a Mrs. Bear, and Mr. Elephant had a Mrs. Elephant, and Mr. Alligator had a Mrs. Alligator, and he saw a man there all by himself, he put him in a deep sleep without any anesthesia. And while he was asleep, he didn't reach into his back, because that meant somebody should walk behind him. He didn't reach into the front, because that meant somebody ought to walk ahead of him. But he reached into the side, which meant somebody ought to walk beside him. And so we honor this man of God, but we honor this woman of God. Come on, help me celebrate First Lady Haynes on today. To the ministerial staff, to all of the leaders, I'm honored to be with you in this celebration service. There are several persons who hail from this church under Dr. Haynes' leadership who I've crossed paths with and watched and admired. I want to give a special shout out to Dr. Tiffany Lloyd, who is sounding the alarm with Jesus and Justice. I want to shout out the talented and creative Amika Black, the owner of Authorities, the headquarters of the Messages for the Movement. And of course, I want to shout out the bold and the sagacious Congresswoman who hails from Texas's 30th district, who continually ethers hypocritical bigots in Congress. I want to shout out Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. And I know there are all kinds of other important people here today, but if I called all of you, I'd never get to preaching. So on three, I just want you to call your name. 1, 2, 3. Now all the important people have been called. I do want to honor my wife in her absence, Lady Cynthia Swan, and I want to thank God for our daughter, Shannon, who is here today, and my grandbaby, Roxy, who is here. I'm always excited to come to Dallas because I get to spend time with them. And though a lot of people call me pastor and bishop, the most important call me daddy and papa. I want to share with you from the book of 1 Samuel, the 30th chapter, the 7th through the 15th verses. And those that are able to stand in reverence to the reading of the word, would you do so? And David said to Abiathar, the priest, Abimelech's son, I pray thee, bring me hither the ephod. And Abiathar brought the ephod to David, and David inquired at the Lord, saying, shall I pursue after this troop? Shall I overtake them? And he answered him, pursue, for thou shalt surely overtake them, and without fail recover all. So David went, he and the 600 men that were with him, and came to the brook Besor, where they were left behind and stayed. But David pursued, he and 400 men, for 200 abode behind, which were so faint that they could not go over the brook Besor. And they found an Egyptian in the field, and brought him to David, and gave him bread, and he did eat, and they made him drink water, and they gave him a piece of cake of figs, and 2 clusters of raisins. And when he had eaten, his spirit came again to him, for he had eaten no bread, nor drunk any water 3 days and 3 nights. And David said unto him, to whom belongest thou? And whence art thou? And he said, I am a young man of Egypt, servant to an Amalekite. And my master left me because 3 days ago I fell sick. We made an invasion on the south of the Cherites, and upon the coast which belonged to Judah, and upon the south of Caleb, and we burned Ziklag with fire. And David said to him, can you bring me down to this company? And he said, swear unto me by God that thou wilt neither kill me nor deliver me into the hands of my master, and I will bring you down to this company. Would you do me a favor and look your neighbor in the eye? And if you owe them some money and can't look them in the eye, just look at the bridge of their nose and say, neighbor, I'm still here. You may be seated. I'm still here. I'm mindful that this is an august occasion and one of extraordinary honor for me to be here. And yet, as a preacher of the gospel, I'm reminded that every time we stand, we do so in the name of the Lord. We do so in the name of the ancestors that have gone before us, because God has blessed us and continues to lead us. And I understand the importance of history, that we stand at this moment holding the reins of our future, not because of our own power, ingenuity, or accomplishments, but because we stand on the shoulders of a faith that sustained our people across generations, and on the shoulders of a generation whose struggle was rooted in resilience. The reason we're here today is because of a generation of named and unnamed people who we can never thank enough. People who had to scrub floors, people who had to be called boy and girl, people who had to work for little or nothing just in order to survive. People who were lynched and brutalized and dehumanized but had a will to survive. And now we stand this day at this moment, and they stand upon the balcony of heaven looking down, saying to us to never forget what God has done. Brothers and sisters, it's a wonderful thing just to survive. Wild animals live to survive, because if they don't, they will become extinct. Even when a person is stripped of everything, there's something in them that still declares that I want to survive. You see, it's good to strive, but when you've been through the type of hell we've been through in these yet to be United States of America, it's a miracle just to survive. You've been sick, abused, disgusted, and broke, but you made it through. It's a miracle because you shouldn't have made it, but you did. Who am I preaching to today? And here's the good news, that you're a child of God, and God will give you the anointing and the ability to go through the tough and the rough spots without falling apart. God will give you the ability to go through the difficult moments without flipping out, to deal with the haters and the hell raisers without going postal, to confront your critics, to live through the ridicule, to survive the negativity, to battle with your backstabbers and even sidestep the silly folk. What am I trying to say? God will give you the ability to get to the boiling point but not boil over, to get to the edge of the cliff without jumping off. Come here, the message, they said, don't push me because I'm close to the edge. I'm trying not to. God will allow you to get close to the fire and not get burned, to get lowered into the lion's den but not be eaten alive, to step down into your Red Sea and not drown. God gives us the ability to go through some things without losing our mind. And in order for you to hold up before God shows up so you don't mess up what God is setting up, you're going to have to learn how to encourage yourself sometime. I'm trying to talk to somebody here who came to worship feeling that if God doesn't step in and work and move in the next few days or do something, that you're going to lose it because you feel like you can't go any further. You've had it up to here. You're at the end of your rope, your Red Sea. You're beyond the point of no return. Don't know what to do, which way to go. You are in a place where you feel like you can no longer cope. But can I stop right here long enough to send a text message to the instant messenger of your soul and tell you that God is already active in your situation? Because whatever you're going through, no matter how bad it is, you can testify right now that it didn't take you out. You ought to tell somebody, you're looking at a miracle right now. Or you ought to tell your neighbor, I'm still here. The fire didn't burn me. The lions didn't eat me. I stepped my way through the Red Sea and didn't go under. I had to deal with demons and I had to handle haters, but I didn't fall apart. I didn't give up. I didn't let go. I kept my joy. I kept my peace and my sanity and my security because God kept me and sustained me in the middle of it all. Is there anybody in here who can declare, preacher, I went through a lot, but I made it. I'm a survivor. I'm enrolled in Maturity 101, and I'm trying to continue to go through and make it. I'm just like Job. Job said, my foot have held his steps, and his way have I kept and have not declined. I have esteemed his word more necessary than my daily food. But after he have tried me, I shall come forth as pure gold. When we look into this particular text, usually when we read this text, we focus on David's agony after finding that the Amalekites, his enemies, had came to Ziklag, took his wives and their children and had burned the city down. We focus on the fact that David's men became so disconcerted with his leadership that they wanted to stone David to death, and that David had enough experience with God to encourage himself in the Lord. But what often gets lost in this story is the plight of this young Egyptian man who takes ill and is left behind for dead. And many of us miss the importance of David's story, for the story in the text not only teaches us the importance of encouraging ourselves in the Lord, but it teaches us how God works in the middle of our pain. You see, everybody can't be David. Somebody has to be the Egyptian man that was left to die by his masters and the Amalekites. The man was helped and brought to David, and some of you may know the deep and abiding pain of being abandoned. You may have been treated like gold by some folk for a while, and then when you were no longer useful to them, they dropped you like a bad habit, dropped you like you were insignificant. And this type of experience can be painful. There are some of you who know how it feels to go from being wanted to being unwanted, to go from being useful to not being useful, to go from being needed to not being needed. The man in the text was left behind to die because he became sick. And many have been rejected because of things that are beyond their control. You've been faithful, helpful, and dutiful, but yet you were kicked to the curb. But here's the good news. While the man was left to die, he didn't die. I came to serve notice that being left to die doesn't mean that you have to die. Come on, brothers, help me testify. This country tried everything in their power to kill your hope, to kill your joy, to kill your dreams. It tried to choke the life out of you through castration and lynching and miseducation and brainwashing. They taught you to hate yourself and to look at yourself through the awfully tainted eyeglasses of white Eurocentric lies. And yet God gave you the ability to break out of the prisons that they put you in. You had your intelligence and your moral worth devalued and degraded by some of the leading intellectuals of modern scholarship. Yet you broke out of the prisons and you went into City Hall, and you went into the halls of Congress, and you went into the governor's mansion, and you even had the audacity to get uppity enough to go into the White House. You were considered inferior by the leaders of Western civilization, including the man who signed the Emancipation Proclamation. Yet here you are leading the world in the area of mathematics and science and technology and religion and education and sports and arts. Ain't nobody got swag like y'all. Oh my God, I need a mop to clean the floor up. There's so much drip up in this place because God. Come on, sisters, help me testify. This country tried negation and degradation. They taught you to look down on your thick lips and to hate your hair and to lock you into prisons of low self-esteem because of who God made you. But you kept breaking out of those prisons and confounding conventional wisdom and breaking glass ceilings. You busted the ceiling down and sashayed your beautiful selves into Congress. You sashayed your way within one heartbeat of the presidency of America. You skyrocketed to the highest levels of finance and science and medicine and education after you were inculcated with the idea that your skin color was ugly, that your hair was nappy, that your lips were too big, that your hips were too wide. You had the audacity, you had the black girl magic gall to turn out in the same year Miss USA, Miss America, Miss Teen USA, Miss Universe, Miss World, because when this nation tried to erase you, God kept you alive. Would you just look at your neighbor and tell your neighbor, neighbor, I'm still here? Y'all sit down, it's rude to stand while somebody's preaching. This Egyptian man was kept alive by God for a purpose, to bless God's people. God still saw him as necessary, though his master didn't feel like he was significant or valuable. And so my first point, my brothers and sisters, is that no matter what your plight in life is, no matter what your socioeconomic status is, no matter what your educational background, no matter what mistakes you have ever made in life, you are still valuable to God. I don't think they got me over on this section. Let me see if they got me over here. Look at somebody and tell them, you are still valuable to God. The man in our text was important and significant, and that's a word for somebody here today who's been dropped and dumped and dismissed and discarded and left behind and kicked to the curb. Don't ever let the meaning and the value of your life and your experiences be left to the conflicts and the opinions and attitudes of other people. Don't let them prognosticate about your future, because your meaning, your significance, and your value ought not be determined by them. It ought to be determined by God. When people see you as useless, God sees you as useful. You're significant to God. You're meaningful to God. You're loved by God. You are cherished by God. You are valuable to God. Have I got any radical folk in the house today that'll just look at your neighbor like you got attitude and say, I'm still valuable to God? I may not be valuable to you, but I'm still valuable to God. And how valuable are you? You are valuable enough for God to wake you up this morning, for God to breathe breath in your body, for God to keep you alive, for God to keep you moving, for God to keep the malignant forces at bay that wanted to destroy you. This man was left for dead and was as good as dead in the minds of those who discarded him. He was easy prey for any predator who wanted to take him out, yet he remained alive. God kept the vultures, the lions, the bears, the wolves away from him. In the absence of sunscreen, God kept him from sunstroke. God kept him alive. And I wonder if there's anybody here today who's not ashamed to testify that God kept you alive when you were in a weakened condition. You ought to go ahead and testify. Look at your neighbor and say, God kept me alive. Oh, God kept you from opportunistic entities that wanted to capitalize on your vulnerability. God protected you from all the hoochie mamas and the gold diggers. God protected you from the pimps and the players and the sugar daddies. God, help me in here today. God kept you so that the blazing heat of adversity didn't take you out. And why did he do it? He did it because you matter. He did it because you're important. He did it because you're significant. He did it because you have purpose. He did it because he ain't through with you yet. Listen, if you ever doubt your importance, if you ever doubt your value, all you got to do is look back over your shoulder and see what God has already done, what God has already brought you through. Matter of fact, just tap your neighbor and point back there and say, neighbor, look where he brought me from. He brought me out of darkness into the marvelous life. God kept me alive. The man was wounded. He had been abused. He had been mistreated. He had been talked about. He had been lied on, looked over, kicked to the curb. He had been disrespected and left for dead. But God kept him alive. You see, being left for dead doesn't mean you gotta die. God's keeping you alive because you have value, because you have meaning, because you have significance. You are functional and valuable and significant to God. So first, you got to recognize that you're still valuable to God. But then second, watch this, God will bring the right people the right time across your path. At the right time, God will bring Freddie Haynes along. At the right time, God will bring Grandmama along. At the right time, God will bring the right people at the the right time to cross your path. You see, sometimes there's so much dysfunction around us that others might not want to be around us. We want to know who a person is and what he or she can do for us before we help them. But notice in the text, David's men extended hospitality to this Egyptian man when they didn't even know his identity. He had nothing to offer them in return. They were kind to him when he had nothing to bring to the table for them. Before they knew who he was, they were kind. And watch this, get this, he accepted their kindness. You see, when you're in a situation like he was in, you can't afford the high price of ego. You can't afford to be choosy or to be proud. He had been left behind to die, and he needed to take any kindness that anybody would show him. I'm trying to help somebody in here today, because there are those who permit their past wounds to cause them to shun any present kindness. Oh my God, they are suspicious of a new love because the old love broke their heart. They're suspect of one pastor because of the pastor they used to have. They don't get involved in the new church because they were hurt in the last church. So they make people jump through hoops in order to prove themselves because of what somebody did back then. But let me help you today. You can't lose your mind over the one that left you, because you're going to need your mind for the one that God's sending. You can't lose your mind over the job that lets you go. You're going to need your mind for the job that is on the way. This man was just glad that somebody said hello. He was glad that somebody found him and wanted to help him. He was strengthened by what they did. He was revived. He was restored. God kept him alive long enough for these men to get to him and to restore him. You see, God has a way of bringing the right people at the right time, because they have the specific assignment of acting as instruments of renewal, revival, and restoration in your life. They don't have any hidden agendas. They're not out to get over on you. They don't want anything from you. God has dispatched them into your life for revival, restoration, oh my God, as instruments to bring you up from where you are. They just want to see you live. They just want to see you survive. They just want to see you rise. They just want to see you make it. They got a hug for you. They want to see you laugh again. They got some money for you. They got some encouragement for you. They got a blessing for you. They got a handshake for you. They got a prayer for you. As a matter of fact, that might be why God providentially sat you next to the person that you're sitting beside today. You ought to turn to your neighbor and say, neighbor, I don't want nothing from you. I just want to see you live. I just want to see you succeed. I just want to see you rise. I just want to see you happy. I just want to see you fulfill your potential. I just want to see you get back in the game. I just want to see you become everything that God wants you to be. Go and shake your neighbor's hand and say, rise, neighbor. Go to the highest height. That's all I want to see. I ain't got no agenda. I just want to see you happy. I just want to see you joyful. I ain't trying to get your digits. I ain't trying to line up a booty call. I ain't trying to get over on you. I just want to see you well. Rise, neighbor. Oh, my. Oh, my God. Look across the room and tell your neighbor, get up from where you are. I want to see you laugh again. I want to see you smile again. All the hell that you've been through. My. You deserve some joy in your life. And since you deserve some joy, can I testify and tell you that in his favor there's life. And that weeping may, I'm sorry, I'm getting Kojic on y'all. That weeping may may endure for a night, but tell your neighbor, joy comes in the morning. Look at somebody else and say, good morning, neighbor. Good morning. Y'all sit down, please. So the man testified that he was an Egyptian that belonged to an Amalekite, and that they had been raiding several towns. They had been bum rushing everybody, looting everybody, burning towns down. He said, we took all of the women, all of the children, all of the money, and all of the food. And we even burned this town called Ziklag. He didn't know who he was talking to. Had he known that he was talking to David, he would have been a little more careful in his description. But this is what you have to see, that God let it happen the way that it happened because his life was necessary for David. Y'all didn't catch that. I said his life was necessary for David. That's my third and final point. Tell your neighbor, your life is necessary for somebody else. Oh, we're celebrating 41 years because Dr. Haynes' life was necessary. Oh my God, for the Dallas community. His life was necessary for those young folk that were on the stage. His life was necessary. This Egyptian provided important information about David's enemies. And God allowed this to happen in his life because it was necessary for David. I came to tell somebody today that your life experiences are necessary for someone else. Your recovery is necessary for someone else's recovery. And one fatal mistake that the enemy always makes is leaving you for dead instead of killing you. He thought you would never recover. That's why he didn't take you out. He expected the bankruptcy to take you out. He expected the rape to take you out. He expected the divorce to take you out. He expected the arrest to take you out. He expected the abuse to take you out. He expected Jim Crow to take us out. He expected an unfair legal system to take us out. He expected racists in the White House to take us out. But it's too late. Look at somebody and say, it's too late. He should have killed me when he had the chance. Because by not killing me, he let me get to the edge of a miracle. Is there anybody in here who's ever been to the edge of a miracle? You're in between just enough and more than enough. In between struggling and stressing. In between resting and blessing. In between debt and debtless. In between weeping and rejoicing. Just one step between empty nets and too much to handle. And the truth is that most of us have been at this place before. And we've been so close to seeing God's blessing. And the enemy messed up by not killing us. Bless his name. And so David gave this man the opportunity to help them and said, can you lead me to these men? And he said, as long as you don't kill me, and as long as you don't turn me back over to my master, I'll lead you to the enemy's camp. Bless his name. And so David and his men followed this Egyptian boy. And when they got to the camp, they looked and saw the Amalekites. They pulled up in the driveway. And the Amalekites were having a party. And that's the mistake the enemy always makes. Because whenever he's stolen your stuff, whenever he's dashed your dreams, whenever he's messed with your family, tried to snatch away your hope, he's prone to throw a party. Whenever he feels like he's won, he's got something that's important, he's ready to celebrate. And so there was a party going on. Everybody in the club was getting tipsy. Bless his name. They were dancing and drinking. Blame it on the goose. Blame it on the Henny. Come on, somebody. They were so intoxicated, the text tells us, that they were in no condition to fight. Don't you know that the devil always overplays his hand? And so David and his men went in unafraid and wiped them out. But then verse 18 says that David recovered. It said David recovered. I just came by to declare that everything that the enemy took is on its way back. Would you tell your neighbor, this is my season for recovery. Bless his name. But wait a minute, when David and his men came to the camp, and the Egyptian man came with them, I can see this Egyptian boy excited about getting around the men that left him for dead, getting around those that dropped him and dismissed him and abused him and used him and left him for dead. Bless his name. And I can see the Egyptian boy saying, surprise. You thought I was dead, but I'm still here. Would you look at somebody and tell them, neighbor, the enemy thought he was going to take me out, but I'm still here. I may be wounded, but I'm here. I may be bleeding, but I'm here. I may be crying, but I'm here. I'm not everything that I should be, but I'm here. Bless his name. I just came on my way to heaven to tell somebody you ought to encourage yourself because you're still here. I might be in a valley, but encourage yourself. I'll shout in the valley. I'll shout through the valley. It should have killed you. Medical science said you should have died. The legal advisor said you should have been in jail. You should be in a mental institution. But here I am. I'm still here. Yes. Encourage yourself. No weapon. No weapon that is formed against me shall prosper, and every tongue that rise against you in judgment shall be condemned. Encourage yourself. I'm blessed in the city, blessed in the field, blessed when I come, blessed when I go. Encourage yourself. I can do all things through Christ that strengthen me. Encourage yourself. I'm healed by the wound in his side. Encourage yourself. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? praise. They said the cancer was going to kill you, but look at somebody and say, I'm still here. They thought the divorce was going to drive you crazy, but look at your neighbor and say, I'm still here. Well, go ahead and give them a still here praise. Pastor, I see where the musicians are. I see where the choir is. I see where some of the leaders are. But can somebody tell me where's the praise section? Is that the praise section way back there? I dare you to praise. I gotta go, y'all. I gotta go. But just look down your road. Look down your road and say, neighbor, excuse me. If you don't like praise, I'm gonna give you 30 seconds to find yourself another seat.